Hey there, folks. Thanks for listening to the WRAL Daily Download. I'm Luis Fernandez. On Monday, Christina Koch, a NASA astronaut and NC State alumna, was honored in Raleigh. There was a whole lot of things going on. An ice cream flavor was named after her. She spoke in front of people. She had a building named after her on campus. This felt as good a time as any to reflect on that Artemis II mission and just what a wonderful moment it was. So here's a conversation from the Daily Download Vault. We're going to go back in time and talk with NASA ambassador and WRAL contributor Tony Rice. Take a listen. For the first time in more than 50 years, NASA is sending astronauts towards the moon. It's a 10-day journey that will see 4 astronauts, including NC State's own Christina Koch, around the moon, all with the hope of furthering our space capabilities. NASA ambassador and WRAL contributor Tony Rice joins us now. Tony, you are at Cape Canaveral. How are things going down there?
It's a beautiful day down here. We got some clouds in the sky. We could talk about that a little bit, but I'm at the historic press site where press has been here to cover the launches, going on back to the Apollo era and before that. But I'm standing in front of you. You can see this giant building here to my right. That's the vehicle assembly building. That's where the SLS rocket that's going to be launching, fingers crossed, was assembled. It was basically stacked and then rolled out to the pad a couple of weeks ago. It takes nearly a day because it goes less than a mile an hour on the way out there. And over to my left, I can see the rocket sitting on the pad, waiting for the astronauts to board and fuel to be loaded and to light that rocket and leave Earth heading back to the moon at 6:24 p.m.
Now, Tony, this is it's historic. I mean, anytime you make a journey like this into space, it's a big deal, especially when you look at the history of our space program. Can you just describe the atmosphere down there, whether it's journalists, whether it's engineers, scientists, or just fans of space and space travel in general? How do people feel about where things currently stand?
Well, I already see people setting up on the side of the road, fans that are down here to watch this, and they've been selling tickets at the visitors complex for weeks and weeks and weeks. I can't find a seat at the press site. They're in the building where they allow press to sit down and file their stories. We've got people from all around the world. I lost count of how many languages I heard being spoken in the press site, but we're all set up here. We're ready to go. So you can already feel the electricity here. And you're right, it is historic. This is the first time we're going back to the moon in over 50 years. So not only is it the first time we're going back to the moon in that long, it's the first time we're sending a woman to the moon.
NC State's own Christina Koch going to be the one there. And we'll talk about her in a second here, but you mentioned this off the top, and I do want to kind of take some time to talk about this. We associate so much of the moon travel with Apollo missions and the Apollo missions that have happened in the past. How would you kind of compare and contrast what's happening now with this Artemis mission to what's happened in the past with Apollo?
So Artemis II is a follow-on from Artemis I, and Artemis I was flown without a crew. We had mannequins, they actually called them moonikins, aboard. They were heavily instrumented to really test out what the forces would be when we actually put people on board. This puts people on board is pretty much reflying that Artemis I mission with a couple of extra things that are going to happen there. And the whole purpose of this is to test out that Orion capsule and make sure we're ready to go back to the moon and actually set down. So make it clear that this isn't going to land astronauts on the moon, it's going to orbit the moon. So the closest thing we can compare it to is Apollo 8. And Apollo 8 is where we got that incredible Earthrise photo. And they're planning on repeating that photo with a lot better cameras this time. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. But this is going to be quite a bit different than Apollo 8 in that they're going to set a record for the farthest that any human has been from Earth. That's because of the way that orbit works. It's going to be quite a bit farther out than the Apollo missions were. So if you've ever seen the images that the Apollo astronauts took out of the windows there, it absolutely filled their view. They could see nothing but moon. This is going to be a little bit different. They're going to be so far away from the moon that they're going to see the entire limb of the moon. And when you talk to the geologists that help train the astronauts, and you talk to the astronauts themselves, they talk about how they're going to be able to see the moon as a witness plate. And what they mean by that is they're going to see all of the history, really, of the solar system that is played out in all of the craters that were created. So they're going to see the entire limb of the moon. They'll They'll see it all at once. And that's really important because it gives them an opportunity to see the moon as a whole. And the geologists are really excited to hear what the astronauts have to say about it, to see the images that come back. But there's nothing like the human eye. We can send all the probes we want, but the human eye, a trained human eye to study these things is really, really important.
I mean, that's incredible. Just to imagine, just the statement that you said, that this is the farthest that people have ever been away from Earth. It's going to be history in front of us. And from the local tie, no Moonican on this one. We've got Christina Koch, NC State grad,
right,
who has this, who's going to be one of these 4 astronauts on Artemis II, the first woman to do this. I mean, what can you say about her journey and what it means to have that kind of connection to such a massive endeavor like this?
Christine's an amazing person, and when I saw that she was selected for the astronaut corps, she was working for NOAA at the time and was actually working down in the South Pacific studying the ozone. So she's had a really amazing journey. She spent time down in Antarctica studying the environment down there, and when she was selected, I reached out to her via email immediately and said, here, my name is, this is what I do, and we have this really cool museum in North Carolina called the Museum of Natural Sciences, and we'd love for you to come by. We'd love to join us for Astronomy Days, and she's actually done that twice. So she's a really, really neat person. She had to learn how to fly a jet. They actually arrived in those jets here just a couple of days ago to extend their quarantine ahead of the mission and ahead of the launch. So she's learned a lot, and it's a really, really tight crew. Hearing them talk about how they back each other up is a really neat thing to hear. Just
hearing those different, she's been to Antarctica, had to learn how to fly a jet, is going to be, traveling around the moon. I mean, what a life. Really, really excited for Christina and this opportunity. At the time of us recording this, we're looking at just under 30 hours until launch. And with any kind of space journey, there are a lot of factors, the forecast being prime among them. And it's not just one forecast we're keeping an eye on, it's 2 forecasts, right? One that's on the surface and one that is a little bit further out. Is that right?
Yeah, one terrestrial and one space. You might have heard of the terrestrial one, and that is handled by the 45th Weather Squadron, which is a couple of miles down south of me, down at the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. I'm still getting used to saying Space Force instead of Air Force, but they're responsible for the launch weather forecast. And I'm standing in one of probably the most instrumented spots on Earth. Everywhere you look, there's a tower that's measuring wind and temperature and things like that. But one of the most important forecast tools, and everybody at the WRAL Weather Center will attest to this, is their eyes. So they're watching the clouds. And that's actually the thing that when they issued the last couple of forecasts, and we're 80% go today, and if there is or for tomorrow's launch, and if there's a need for a 24-hour delay, it only decreases by about 5%. So the weather's looking pretty good, knock wood, but the one concern that they have, and I'm looking around me right now, it's mostly cloudy, is a cumulus cloud rule. And the reason that's important is that's where lightning can form. There's a couple of different ways that lightning can form when you have a rocket in the picture. Something that we learned during the Apollo 12 mission, when lightning struck the rising rocket and actually rode down the plume. So lightning's a pretty big deal. They keep a really good eye on that. But like I say, the forecast is looking pretty good, but they will be keeping a very close eye on that. You mentioned space weather. Our friends in NOAA out in Boulder, Colorado at the Space Weather Prediction Center, they're keeping an eye on this as well. The space weather can impact communications with the rocket, but it also is a factor in how much radiation the astronauts receive. As they're on their way to the moon, they're outside of the protective magnetosphere. That's what redirects all of the nasty radiation away from us, so they won't have that protection. Now, their capsule does have some protection available, and if there were to be some sort of an event that occurs during this several-day mission, they do have a way to protect themselves. And if you go on WRAL.com, I posted something that outlines all these kind of things that they're looking at and what protections the astronauts have.
A lot of variables to be balancing there, Tony, that's for sure. Now, I guess the last thing I want to kind of bring up here is at this point we're looking at about a little less than 30 hours until scheduled launch. So what's next? What are kind of some of the milestones we need to be checking off as we get closer to what is hopefully a successful launch with no delays?
There's many steps in the countdown, and you can go on the NASA website and see the gory details there. But some of the highlights, the countdown clock started a couple of days ago, actually, where there was a call to station where everybody who's going to be working the launch has to be on site and has to be ready to go. And they do work in shifts because they're working on this 24 hours a day until the actual launch time, and then afterwards as well. But probably the next big milestone is going to be before 8 o'clock when there is a poll. And we've probably seen this poll before in any of the Apollo movies that you've seen, where they're taking a census throughout the room with the different specialties in the Launch Control Center, whether the engines are ready to go or the fueling's going to, all of that. One of them is the launch weather officer, so they're going to be giving a go, no go. But there's also going to be a poll done ahead of tanking, and that's when they start putting the several 100,000 gallons of very cold fuel on board the rocket. That's where there's been some challenges with this rocket and some other rockets that have used these kind of liquid oxygen and liquid hydrogen fuels. It's a very fussy fuel, they say. It's because the atoms are so small. They tend to want to leak out of there. They've had a couple of practice sessions, and I think they've got those problems worked out, but one of those weather criteria is going to be whether the weather is safe enough for that tanking to begin. Again, that's before 8 o'clock, and then getting closer to countdown, there'll be several holds in the clock where they can do their test to make sure they're good to proceed. And then there's that final about 10 or 15 minutes before the scheduled launch time, that final poll of everybody in the Launch Control Center to see if there's any reason to stop the rocket. It's important to note that everybody in there has the ability to stop this countdown. And it's disappointing. There's lots of people out here who would want to see it go off, but you don't get to do it twice. So they always want to err on the side of caution. And also, we've got some opportunity, if there is a reason to stop the launch, to fix it, to come up with a solution to it, because the launch window is about 2 hours long, which is very different from back in the shuttle days where we had to chase the ISS, because mostly we were bringing astronauts or equipment up to the ISS. So you absolutely had to launch within a couple of second window to make it up there. That's not the way this works. Since we're going to the moon, we've got about 2 hours to do it.
Is there anything else, Tony, that you'd like to mention about just this historic day, this experience, anything that you think people should know about just what to expect?
I'll kind of defer to our astronaut friends, because every time I've had the opportunity to talk with them or listen to them speak on this topic, particularly the Artemis II crew, the first crew that's going to be flying on this Orion capsule, they talk about how they're just a first step in all of this. They're looking to Artemis III, where we're actually going to land on the moon, but they're looking forward more to landing on Mars. So this very well could be, we talked to our parents and grandparents about where they were when the Apollo 11 mission actually landed on the moon. They have great memories of this. This could be the memory for that next generation.
Can't wait to see it happen. Tony Rice, NASA ambassador and WRAL contributor, live at Cape Canaveral. Tony, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to the WRAL Daily Download and for making us part of your morning routine. Another great way to get WRAL news is the Morning Briefing newsletter. It's a daily email with Triangle news, events, and headlines to help you get ready for the day. Sign up at WRAL.com/newsletter.